All right, welcome back everyone to another episode of the Vendetta Sports Media Daily Show. This is your Tuesday crew alongside Matt Hannafin. I'm Chris Bagdonis. Matt, what is going on, my friend?
Doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. A few days removed from the NBA draft. My beloved Eastern Conference champion Heat will start summer league in less than a week. For everyone, it starts July 7th, so that's about 10 days. We're 3 days away from free agency. Um, so yeah, I'm doing well, man. I'm doing
It's
all
going to be a
right.
good one, yeah.
Our Yankees are playing at least
Our
better.
Yankees, I know
They
they're
took two
they're
or three
kind
over
of
the
they've
weekend
kind of
against
they took
Texas.
2 out of 3 against the Texas Rangers of all teams, which I still cannot believe happened. But hey, we keep
Um,
we the train keeps chugging.
I don't get it. Again, I think I've said this in previous daily shows, but like every single time we're on here, we talk about them, and if we talk about them in a good way, like they're playing well, they start stinking, and if they start stinking, we talk badly about them, they start playing well. So
We put
I
like
don't
a
know if
double
we
jinx
should
on
today
them or
just to keep
something.
the
I
train
know.
rolling.
Yeah,
I believe
exactly.
they start a series tonight, a 3-game series against Oakland. Um,
So we'll see.
Baltimore will come to the stadium. I
The
believe
Aaron
next
Hicks
week for
revenge
four.
series. I'm not prepared for that.
We received unfortunate news over the weekend that Aaron Judge has a torn ligament in his toe, and there's no timetable for return, so that's always good to hear.
That's just music
Uh,
to my ears.
but
We'll
other
see how
than
much
that,
Billy McKinney and Jake Bowers can bail this team out.
yeah.
I don't know how much longer the facade will stay up, but again, we'll just keep our fingers crossed. And
And we were possibly gonna talk about this later in the episode, but the New York Mets,
oh man, dude, I
that's
feel bad because I have a lot of family that are Mets fans, and I've been watching a lot of their games recently, and it's just like a form of torture.
it's tough.
It's
No,
tough.
it's that eighth inning. I believe it was Sunday against the
Oh,
Phillies.
against the Phillies, dude, that was,
They're up
I mean,
6-3.
that's unprecedented.
Buck doesn't bring in Ottavino, who says he's
Who said he
ready
could pitch?
after the game, even though Buck said post game that he wasn't available, which was very weird. And then he doesn't bring in Robertson, who pitched, I think, had like 13 pitches the day before. Like, it's not like he wasn't even like taxed or anything like that. Brigham hits the go ahead or the
Just
tying and go ahead hitters. With the bases juice, they lose 7-6. They're now 8 games below 500,
like eight
16
games
games out
out
of
of
the
the wild
Braves.
card, right? Yeah, the Braves are up 16 games on them.
Yeah.
And I mean, just the one issue I've seen with the Mets is that they just cannot ever get ahead of a count. They just cannot throw strikes. And it feels like, yesterday I was watching Verlander just kept getting behind in the count every
Yeah.
single time. And then obviously, what's his name? Nick Smith comes back from his 10-game suspension and just lets a home run from like their number 9 hitter in the order, and that's all she wrote. And so again, Mets fans out there, I know we're supposed to have a heated rivalry between the Mets and the Yankees, but I will just say I'm sorry that it's just not pretty.
I would say for me in particular, again, I don't live on the East Coast, nor have I ever lived on the East Coast. I've been along the East Coast plenty of times in my life in like the Northeast area. But I've never like lived there, and so I know you're much closer to this whole Mets thing than me. I've never met a Mets fan. I mean, I don't say I personally know a Mets fan. I've seen Mets fans around, but like I've never known a Net. Or actually, no, I do know one Mets fan.
I know
Actually,
there's obviously
but
someone
I
in the
don't.
in the
The
Slack.
point is, it's like, oh yeah, other than like the company Slack, but like other than that, there's
Just
there's not really many Mets fans in my area, and so for me, it's like I don't really. It's not a rivalry ish to
right.
me. Um, but I can see how it is for some, I guess, Yankee fans. I mean, I just know from like more Mets fans dislike Yankee fans than the inverse. At least
Precisely.
that's just what I've known, at least like over like social media and everything. It's like so I don't have any like vitriol against the Mets, but like just watching what's happening, like 360+ million team.
A
They're like
300,
by
yeah,
far
a dumpster
by
fire.
far the highest payroll in baseball, and it just seems like they can't get out of their own way. Like what if they're pitching, they're not hitting, and if they're hitting, they're not pitching. It's just it's one of those weird dynamics where it's like, I remember someone made this meme over Yankees Twitter like years and years ago, and it's like a gif of like the bullpen, the hitting, and like the rotation or like the defense or whatever, and it's always like when two are on, one's off, and it just like keeps alternating. And it kind of reminds me of like what's happening with the Mets right now. Like, again, when it comes to they're not being able to they have like mental mistakes. Totally. And it comes from a manager who has built what's the word, built a reputation of not of having his teams like do all the little things correctly. And it seems like this year, just the wheels have completely fallen off the wagon. I know we were going to set to talk about this later in the podcast, but I guess
it's fine. I honestly like opening with this, and it's also tough because Buck Showalter has also built a reputation of having a very short shelf life in pretty much every stop he's had. Obviously, the Yankees in the '90s. You look more recently at the Orioles, the
that Buck was a little longer, but still,
yeah. But the Buck Showalter effect can only go on for so long. And especially when you consider they were in the same division as the Phillies, who fired Rob Thompson earlier in the season than they are now last year. Or Joe Girardi, and put in Rob Thompson. And so, you think about that, and the Phillies go on to make the World Series, like how much longer does this go on for the Mets? And obviously Buck is going to keep giving the same one-dimensional answer and says that, winning is the only answer. Like, obviously winning is the only answer, but there's decisions he is making that are keeping the Mets from doing that. And so, again, it's also, like you said, there's certainly a big brother, little brother dynamic between the Mets and the Yankees. I forget what the ESPN 30 for 30 on the 98 Yankees or I guess the 2000 World Series. And Derek Jeter's like, we didn't hate them. They were just the Mets.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of how it is, unfortunately. But I definitely do have some sympathy for them. Steve Cohen, the one thing you can't fault the man for is that he's putting his money where his mouth is. He's at least trying to make the team better by spending exorbitant amounts of money. But so far it is not really, other than a wild card loss last year, hasn't amounted to much.
And it's been plenty of their hitters and Verlander and Max have just regressed.
Yeah.
And it's like when you're not getting the same production from Jeff McNeil, or you're
Starling Marte
Marte or Lindor, that's gonna, obviously, you can't predict that. It's unfortunate that it's practically all happening at once. Pete hasn't been great this year. He's hit he's towards the league leader in homers. Yep. And he's dealt with some injuries, but he's still, I don't think the OPS is average, but it's, I don't think it's
very low. He's a very poor batting average. He's in the 220.
Yeah. He's getting, his batting average is kind of cratering everything else that he's done. Nimmo has been, I think, better, but there just hasn't been a consistent production from its lineup. I know Alvarez has regressed.
After his hot start, he's
there's been inconsistency. I think he's still in AAA, but with I think Vientos, I think that's how you say his name. And so it's and then obviously when your two near 40-year-old or 4-year-old aces are
not who they used to be,
not they're still not pitching terribly, but you're not getting ace level production from them, which is hurting them. Especially in games where you can't hit, and they haven't been, again, an above average lineup this season. Again, they've suffered regression. And so you are in need of that ace-like production. I know they've also dealt with injuries from Tyler McGill, I think's dealt with some injuries this year, and he hasn't just pitched that well when he has been on the bump. Drew Peterson, I know, has been pitched pretty poorly, and I think he's going to be returning this week.
He's going to be in the rotation against Milwaukee this week.
I think it's Lucecci hasn't been that well either, but
just compounding, like you said.
It's just compounding on them, and then when you're having to tax the bullpen, that again has its, eventually bottoms out for a stretch over a 162 game season. That just happens. You got to figure out how to manage that well, and so it's just all coming crashing down. But then like I just can't get over like some of like the mental mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, it's also just like misfortune, like you said yesterday, especially, Verlander gets into trouble early. He has to work out of,
Yeah.
bases loaded in the first inning. And then the Mets just go down 1-2-3, and he has pretty much no time to kind of relax. And he has to go, he was working himself out of trouble for almost every inning yesterday. And again, it's like you said, it's compounding all at once. And just the main thought I have is, this winter, I think Steve Cohen, at the very least, he will not be outbid for Shohei Ohtani. He will bid. He will put a $520+ million offer on the table. I
At this point, I
guarantee it.
have no idea because part of it's what Shohei wants.
He definitely wants to be on the West Coast.
Like, does he really want to be on the East Coast? I don't know.
I
I
highly
can't
doubt
answer
it.
that question for you. We've heard it over the years that he would prefer to stay on the West Coast, but that can change in any given moment.
That's true.
Um, so it's like I don't know. I'm sure he's going to bid a lot for him. I'm not going to sit
I
here and
mean,
doubt
and
that.
I'll be honest. I mean, Otani's probably. I mean, like that conversation that was in the Slack. Like he may not be a two-way player for many more years, but for the time he is, he could be the one player that fixes the Mets' problems with both his bat and his arm. That's the one. I thought it could have been
Maybe
Carlos Correa, especially if the Mets could have gotten him on the 6-year deal that Minnesota got him on. I think that would have been a very nice pickup, but you know
medicals,
here
man.
here we are, nearly in July, and the Mets are going to have to go at least like 55 and 27 in their last 80 games or 82 games
Oh
to
my
at least
goodness.
have a shot at the wild card.
I mean, I wait. How many games back are they like from the wild card? It
They're
can't be
like
that
they're
much.
like at least 8 games back.
I'm gonna look right now. Um, I mean, yeah, they're gonna obviously have to be better than they are right now to make the wild card. That's not.
I mean, I just think the
There's no
first
doubt
order of
about
business is just to get Buck out of there. Obviously, he won Manager of the Year. They won 100 and something games last year. It was, by all stretches, a great season, but you collapse at the end against Atlanta for the division. You let the Padres come in and really embarrass you. Kind of, they go out with a whimper in the wild card, and
that. Yeah, they're
now,
8.5 back of the third wild card spot. The Dodgers have the third wild card
yeah,
spot.
you're not.
I've been
Yeah,
saying that a month and a half ago.
yeah.
Uh,
Shout out the Giants and shout out the Arizona Diamondbacks.
the Marlins
Yeah,
have a better record than the Dodgers right now.
and the Braves just. I think the Braves just won't stop winning.
The Braves are so good, dude. Like this team is
It's unbelievable.
they're a machine, bro. Like
Unbelievable. Just everywhere you look, they should make a play for Ohtani, but I doubt it.
what they're gonna give him the classic Atlanta Braves
I know.
eight,
I mean, the
eight
home,
for
the just,
8 for 50.
I
He's
mean,
just gonna accept
I
it.
mean, I was just thinking because they have such great cost control and all their star players, they have some flexibility, but they wouldn't give them a big
Anthopoulos is gonna be like, here's a 6 for 24. Do you want it?
Yeah, just stranger things have happened. I highly doubt it, but again, the Mets, I'm pulling for them. I really, in my heart of hearts, even
Trader, no.
my internet was kind of acting up for a second, but we can switch gears now to the NBA free agency or the John Collins trade. What are you thinking?
I mean, there's the John Collins trade. Something that just popped in my head was also the Chris Paul trade, which felt like 17 years ago.
Yes.
There was another trade. Oh, the Marcus Smart trade.
Yeah, the Grizzlies trade.
I mean, we could touch on any of those really quick. I mean, we can probably fast forward back. What was your initial reaction to the whole Porzingis saga where it's like, oh, Shams reported earlier, I believe it was Thursday? No, I think it was Wednesday where he was like, oh, the Celtics are looking for or they're in deep discussions with Kristaps Porzingis, and then it comes out probably a hour later that okay, they've agreed to terms or like something
Right.
along those lines where it's like they've agreed to like a deal or something like that, but it wasn't official. And then
Right.
hours pass, and
breaks down.
the deal gets just like nicked, and the deal is, and all of a sudden there's like, wait, there's no more trade, and so that opens chaos because of the Brogdon injury that gets subsequently reported, and then all of a sudden they wait until the midnight Eastern deadline for Porzingis' opt-in for some reason that they didn't push back. I mean, they could have if they wanted to. It wasn't like dire. At least it didn't feel dire in my head. But regardless, they get it done like right before that that midnight Eastern deadline, that they set, and all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, the Grizzlies are involved in the trade. They're sending Tyus Jones to Washington. That's funny. That's also just weird. But then Marcus Smart's going to Memphis. It's just like, wait, what's going on here? And then you see Kristaps along with Memphis traded, I believe, 2 picks. Their 2023 pick, which was number 25 overall, and then a Golden State first rounder in 2024. And it was just like a weird, like, oh, wow, Kristaps is going to Boston. Oh, wait, that's not happening anymore. Oh, wait, Marcus Smart's now leaving Boston, and Kristaps Porzingis is coming in. Oh, plus 2 first-round picks. It was just a whirlwind. Like, what was kind of your reaction? I know. I was out. I was out somewhere, but I was like locked into my phone for an hour.
I was shook. I mean, I remember.
It was just like, internet was popping off.
I don't know why my camera keeps going in and out, but that's fine. So, oops. All right, I gotta stop clicking stuff. But it was a moment in history in Slack. It was crazy. Trey and Griffin were just
moment of history,
incensed by losing Marcus Smart, and I can understand that. I've seen as a Knicks fan, I mean, Marcus Smart is certainly a heart and soul player for the Celtics, and you can attest to that, in the battles they've had against the Heat in recent years. And again, from a purely asset standpoint, I think the Celtics did really well in getting both Porzingis and 2 first-round picks. But also, like Trey said, there are concerns about the toughness now with the Celtics. You lose arguably their toughest player in Marcus Smart, and you replace him with a guy who I can tell you as a Knicks fan is injury prone in Porzingis. And again, that's the big caveat. If the Celtics are able to stay healthy, especially in the playoffs, they will probably be the favorite in the Eastern Conference to reach the NBA Finals. Like, I was looking at the odds. I was thinking of putting a cheeky futures bet in last night. I'm looking for some quick cash or some not quick cash because that would have to be next summer. But again, I was like, why not? What are the Celtics odds? And right now they're like plus 475. And I was like, let's temper our expectations.
Vegas has had this love affair for Boston for the last couple of seasons. Not to say it's unwarranted, but to me, that the fact that they're favorites to win the finals over Denver feels a little crazy to me, if I'm being completely honest.
We saw Denver,
one of the most repeatable champions that we've had since the Warriors dynasty. But we were also probably saying the same thing about the Bucks and whatnot. But like, it just, that feels a little like too soon-ish to me.
I agree.
Like, I want to see how this ultimately plays out first. I like the deal for Boston. I was kind of like one of the people. I was just like, okay, Boston, they get 2 first-round picks and they get Kristaps Porzingis from Marcus Smart. Like, there is we talked about it on the live show, the draft live show a little bit on Thursday, but like, there is you don't want to lose the heart and soul, as you mentioned. Like, you don't want to lose that type of player, but at the same time, like, at some point, I didn't mention this during the live show, but at some point, it felt like, Marcus, it felt like time was coming.
I see that because
it felt like the time was coming, and he was always the one, not always the one. Jalen's been the one most involved in like the trade rumors for like the big stars, but it felt like Mark was just kind of on the outside, creeping in on like, are they going to move him? Are they going to move him? And yeah, Boston does not have the same toughness that they had under Ime, and I think a big part of that is because of Ime. He was kind of like that strict professor that would like smack the ruler on the table if someone was acting up and kind of like correct him.
Definitely, like you said, less sandpaper as a result of that.
Yeah, and so I'm just interested to see how this shake things up between the dynamic. I mean, obviously Boston. I don't know if they're gonna be in contention for a lead guard or something along. I mean, it gives more playing time. I mean, I think Brogdon's good. It's
I agree.
unfortunate that he wasn't healthy at portions during the latter half of their postseason run last year. But that just happens with
It's just how an 82 game season goes.
yeah, like he still played what 65-ish games, something like that. Like he was still available for most of the season. I don't remember how many games he exactly played, but like I think he's a good player. And him and Derek, I mean, obviously this gives more runway for Derek White as well, and I think that's also like important. I think Derek White was probably their third best player last year.
I agree.
Um, and so that gives them like more runway for that. And so I think ultimately from Boston's perspective, they went out well in this deal. I think from Memphis's perspective, they kind of get their quasi somewhat Dylan Brooks replacement in Marcus Smart.
The Tony Allen reincarnation.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of funny. Like I saw this like it's an interesting parallel between Tony Allen and Marcus Smart. They both went to I think Oklahoma State. They both I don't know if
They
Tony
both
Allen's
lost the finals with the Celtics.
they both got traded from Boston to Memphis. And so it's just like I think Memphis got better, even though they did lose Tyus Jones. I am kind of interested by Washington, like what they're doing right now.
I
I
know.
don't know if they're going to be as bad as people think this upcoming season. I mean, Tyus Jones and Monte Morris are two like point guards that can stabilize an offense.
Totally.
They did get Koulibaly, who is kind of like that. He's kind of he was a raw prospect. He was Victor's teammate over Metropolitans '92, but I liked him as a prospect, and there was a lot of late buzz with him. And you could just put on the tape. I mean, he's lengthy as hell.
Now they're going to give him the keys.
Yeah, like it's kind of one of those things where it's like you just let him go, and I mean, it's going to be a long-term project for him, and I hope Washington doesn't rush it and expedite it like not that they've done in the past, but hopefully this is a pick like an upside pick that hits for him, and if it does, well, you have a phenomenal chip on your hands.
Yep.
But I just think I think all sides somewhat benefit from this, even though Memphis did give up the 2 first-round picks. They did give up Tyus Jones, who I believe was kind of who would have been a good starting point guard for 25 games with Josh's suspension. But I still think they did get better defensively. I think they did find as good or as kind of replicable of a Dylan Brooks replacement as you could probably ask for. And Marcus Smart has shown that he could be kind of that creator, that kind of that initiator, that table setter for an offense like he was in Boston, especially this last year, but like the last couple of years. And so kind of shifting gears a little bit, I know we could probably go over this quickly, but this one was kind of a weird one to me. Chris Paul's now a Warrior.
Yeah.
Like, I know there was discussion beforehand about it. It was funny to me that Washington had to attach draft assets to get off Jordan Poole's 4-year contract when he's 23. Like, he's a young player. And you use him to acquire Chris Paul. I mean, it does raise their collective IQ from a basketball standpoint. And I don't think that's Draymond insurance, but it's something that, like last year, we did see with Golden State that when it wasn't Draymond or Steph or what, like their just collective IQ wasn't as good.
There were lapses, yeah.
Yeah, there was lapses, and it wasn't as good as you would expect it to be from a Golden State team. Now you bring in Chris Paul, but Chris Paul is a type of player who plays like the polar opposite of what Golden State does systematically. I mean, Chris Paul is just one of the slowest paced operators in the entire league in terms of like he operates at his own speed, and that's been a benefit to him his entire career, and that's not something I'm gonna take away from him. But like Golden State is a team that will like to push the pace, and there's a lot of movement. And I know that Golden State isn't going to change the way they play. And so Chris, to some extent, when he's on the floor, whether he's with Steph or whether they're kind of staggering it,
Right.
he's going to have to kind of change the way that he plays a little bit. He can still do the high ball screen stuff with Kevon Looney or with Draymond or whatever, but I don't think that can be a consistent spam that he was able to do when he was in Houston, when he was in Oklahoma
OKC.
City, when he was in Phoenix. Like that's not something that I don't think he's going to be able to just fall. I mean, he's something that he might go from possession to possession, but it's just a weird, like, this guy couldn't play less like what Golden State typically plays like. But there is certain aspects that I am intrigued about. He is finally playing with Steph after years of kind of having a rivalry with Steph.
And being on the losing side of it.
And being on the losing side of it, he's now playing with Steph. I know Draymond made comments a few years back about he just does not like Chris Paul. Well, I mean, Draymond, I'm expecting him to re-sign with the team. But now Golden State, it doesn't help their luxury tax bill either, which if I'm being, depending on what Draymond signs for, I mean, I know Steph and Clay are obviously making 40 plus million. Andrew Wiggins is making 34, 35 million. Once Chris Paul's contract becomes guaranteed, it becomes about 31 million, which is more than what Jordan Poole was making this last year.
Oh boy.
I don't know if Draymond's going to sign for less, but he's probably going to be getting at least, I'm guessing, 20 to 25 million, unless he was willing to take a substantial pay cut, assuming he does re-sign back. So it doesn't really help their luxury tax bill at all. I'm interested to see what the final numbers are for all of them. I don't have them pulled up, but like I don't know. It's just a weird kind of move. I mean, over under, how many shots is Jordan Poole going to average next year with the Wizards? 20?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the line, if betting sites ever made a line, it would have to be at least 17.5.
He's going to be hucking and chucking, baby.
Yep.
Which again, he's proved that when he is in a starting role, he's much better than when he's not. But like, nevertheless, he's still going to be the Bradley Beal
that ball
that he left in Phoenix, or that he left in Washington, will be supplemented by one Jordan Poole next year.
Yeah, he will single-handedly.
So, I mean, it's just a weird trade. I don't really love this for Golden State, but I don't know. I want to get. I mean, I know I just went on like a big soliloquy, but like,
no, don't worry. I mean, I just think Golden State could have just had such a better big swing than that. Like, I mean, already you're calling up Phoenix, who's a rival of yours in the Western Conference. You know, you're going to be in the race with them for the playoff spots. Why not call a different team in the West? Why not call up like?
Well, I mean, it was Washington. Remember, you got traded.
Oh, yes, that's true. It was Washington. So I guess your big swing. I mean, I obviously I can't come up with any names right now of who it should have been instead of Chris Paul, but like
Zion.
Come on, Zion. That would have been something.
I'm just kidding.
Or I was thinking like maybe even like Karl Anthony Towns if the Timberwolves are ready to pull the plug on that. But that would have been again another whole different thing. Steve Kerr would have to change the way he plays if his center was Karl Anthony Towns. But I mean, I get it. I mean, things must have really reached a breaking point between whether it was Poole and Draymond or Poole and Steph. You know, things must have really deteriorated.
It was Poole and Draymond.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen rumors on Twitter of what could have been said leading up to that punch before the season started, but you know, I just think that the Warriors could have really cut ties with Poole and gotten something more helpful to their cause than Chris Paul.
That's the weird situation about it, or that's the weird like caveat to it, because it's like you wouldn't expect a 23-year-old Jordan Poole who just signed this 4-year extension, who with the extension kicking in this year, you wouldn't expect that to now you have to give assets to part with to acquire a player who was almost waived like 3 weeks ago. And that's like, we're going to look back on history and we're just like, wait, what? That happened? But the Draymond incident, how Jordan Poole played throughout the season, even he was consistently inconsistent. All of that kind of it made for a weird isolated circumstance where it's like I don't think this is going to set the market for other players who sign a similar contract to this, because it's such a weird, like, he had an incident with the teammate. The teammate is expected to re-sign back, and you knew you couldn't bring both of those back. It had to be one or the other.
Yep.
And so,
Especially, I'll just quickly add, after the terrible, terrible showing Jordan had in the playoffs against the Lakers.
that too. That too. Jordan wasn't good at all this postseason. And so all of that combined, you can rationalize it a little bit more, but it's still like you acquire a player. I mean, albeit one of the smarter basketball players of this generation, but you acquire a player who's 38.
Injury
It is
prone.
from a perspective of like, it can be labeled an expiring deal because his contract in 24-25 is non-guaranteed deal, so they could just waive it and it's just completely off the books if it doesn't work out after 1 year. But, and I know the second apron penalties are a little more punitive in this first year than it is in 2024 and beyond. And so I guess from that perspective, it's like, okay, this isn't like the worst thing ever. Like, it's not like Chris Paul's on like a 3-year deal or whatever. Like, it's not like he's gonna be making 90 million over the next 3 years. It's 31, and then you could just cut ties if it doesn't work out, or you can kind of find a way to rearrange it or whatever if it does. But like, you do acquire a 38-year-old player who's lost a ton of juice, and he couldn't be polar opposite of the way that your team has played for several years under Steve Kerr. Chris Paul plays the exact opposite of that. And so I don't know how that's going to work. Again, like, there's going to be times where Chris Paul is going to, whether probably steps off the floor or whatever, there's going to be times where Chris Paul kind of has those ball handling responsibilities, and they'll go from that high pick and roll from time to time or whatever. But I don't think it's going to be a consistent thing. And it's just like, I don't know how much run Chris Paul is going to get. Is he gonna stick with? Is Kerr gonna play him 30 minutes a night like he's played his entire career? Is he gonna be 20 or 25? How is the minutes distribution gonna work with all that? And so that's just all things I'm interested to see. I don't love it for Golden State. It's funny for Washington because, again, they get their much younger. I don't want to say Bradley Beal replacement because they played different brands of basketball, but you're gonna, in terms of like shot volume, sure, but it's just funny how they were able to get a first-round pick from Golden State for Chris Paul, but they weren't able to get a first-round pick for Bradley Beal or Kristaps Porzingis. Again, weird circumstances. You're trading with Phoenix; they don't have any picks. You get swaps. But in the Porzingis,
that's a whole other thing.
It's just weird optics from all of that. But and then, I mean, we could probably brush over the John Collins trade that happened yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably definitely the quickest of the three. And I wrote about it, and I honestly think it's not a terrible deal for either side, because I'm sure John Collins, I'm sure the Hawks could have called a team up and gotten a first-round pick for him. Like, I think there's still talent. He's still, like, not that old, but you probably would have to take some sort of salary in return. And basically, other than Rudy Gay's non-guaranteed contract, you're getting pretty much a cap dump from the Hawks perspective. And so I think it's going to be along the lines of like a trade exception, right, Matt?
Yeah, no. So here's the interesting part about yesterday and the deal yesterday. And so John Collins gets traded. He's making roughly 25.5 million. Atlanta built a trade exception from that. They built a $25 million trade exception from that. But they're also able to absorb a previous trade exception. I can't remember from who, but they're able to absorb Rudy Gay's contract into. They had like about $6.3 million trade exception with the new CBA. Instead of it being you're getting $100,000 leeway with the trade exception, it's now $250K, and so it was still small enough to where you could absorb Rudy Gay's like 6.4 million, whatever it was, and so. For both, from that perspective, it works out because you're able to absorb Rudy Gay into. I think you're able to build a bigger trade exception from that instead of it being. I think you would be able to. Atlanta would have been able to build like an $18 million trade exception, whatever that difference is. But instead, it's now 25 again. But I will again preface by saying that the majority of trade exceptions aren't used. I was actually digging into this yesterday after the trade happened. I think there's now 51, 52 trade exceptions that are now active throughout the league.
Wow.
Or now, like, there's 52, 51, 52. I can't remember the exact number, but there's that amount of trade exceptions that are now like active and they haven't expired yet. Including the Bertans one that happened on draft night, to
Oh
where
yeah.
they were able to trade back. They were able to trade Bertans with the Thunder, build a $17 million trade exception, and then absorb Rashawn Holmes from Sacramento, and that leaves like $5 million left for the next year, and so they're able to use that. But like the majority of trade exceptions, because they're so small and because they're not able to find someone who's able to fit into that, the majority of them just aren't used. I mean, you can use trade exceptions for multiple players, but you can't combine trade exceptions. So it's like if I had a $17 million trade exception and an $8 million trade exception, I can't combine it to make a $25 million trade exception. That's just not how it works. And so the $25 million one is the biggest one in the league now. And so Atlanta could use it if they want to. They may not have to use a lot of it, but they could just, like, if they're willing to take, I don't know, players making $10 million or something at the trade deadline or whatever the case is.
Right.
I mean, they have a year to use it. And so they can do that without having to without having to money match or whatever the case is. I mean, this also is just tax relief from Atlanta's perspective.
Totally.
Because I think they were a little bit above the tax heading into this offseason. They're able, I think, I looked at it this morning. They're now, I believe, around 14 million below the projected luxury tax, and they still have contracts that they could trade. I mean, I know Woj noted yesterday, and when you talked about it a little bit, that they're going to be continuing to make moves, or at least they're going to be in least. I don't remember the exact phrasing that Woj used, but they're going to be
like deal making mode or something. Like something weird. Like yeah.
And so it's like they have Clint Capella, who has 2 years, I think $45 million left on his deal. I know. DeAndre Hunter, I believe, recently signed an extension that I believe is kicking in this year. I think
he was. Yeah, he's 2019 draft, so I think.
And so I don't know if I would get off of that per se, but I mean, it's something that Atlanta could use. I mean, they are also in a tough spot with like Bogdanovich, who, although it is a front-loaded contract, still has roughly $7 million left on his deal over 4 years, and so that's just long-term money that I don't know if a team's going to be willing to take on. It's funny because when you actually do look at it, like DeJounte Murray's on an expiring deal. And so it's like if somehow Atlanta craters this regular season, he might be an interesting trade piece that could help a contender. I don't know if that's something that they're considering at all. I mean, I know Rudy Gay, he has that player option that he would have had to have kind of opted into to make that yesterday's trade.
Right.
But he's making $6.5 million. The thing that the John Collins trade does open up, just from a basketball perspective, is it opens up more minutes for like Sadiq Bey, who they acquired last trade deadline for multiple second round picks.
Yeah.
And then if they want to use DeAndre Hunter as kind of like a small ball forward, they can do that. Jalen Johnson, I know he was impressive in the second half of the season. It opens up more room for AJ Griffin, who before Quinn Snyder came in was kind of like getting some run, and then he wasn't getting as much run in the second half of the season, it felt like. And so it just opens up more room for their wings to play. I'm not sure exactly what the rotation will look like. I'm guessing that Sadiq Bey will kind of become that more traditional small ball four, at least a more traditional small ball four than or not small ball four, but more traditional 3-and-D four. Because I know John Collins, I mean, he suffered a finger injury a couple of years ago. I don't think that healed, or it definitely didn't help him last year. He was below 30%. I know there's been plenty of smoke around him for God knows how long about him on the trade market, whether it's in the offseason or at the trade deadline. So I'm sure that didn't help him mentally. And so now that he's able to be with like Lauri Markkanen, who's played the three in the past, he's kind of able to be a little bit of a floor spacer alongside Walker Kessler, who was phenomenal last year's rookie. Like, it is a very interesting deal, and it's something that Ainge can get off of in a year or two if he wants to. Like if something happens, it is interesting because Utah also does still have cap space. I mean, I don't remember the exact terms of their contracts, but Jordan Clarkson and Taylor Horton Tucker have like opt out deals, and like if they both opt out, I believe I read somewhere where they can still have like 20 million in cap space with the John Collins money on the books. And so,
Wow.
I don't know. I'm guessing one of them will opt in. I'm not 100% sure, but in the off chance that both do opt out, they'll still have plenty of cap space to add if they want to. And so it is an interesting deal. It just speaks to the value that John Collins did have.
It's true.
Because again, over these last few seasons, I mean, he was once at like not too long ago. He was a guy who's averaging 20 and 10.
He had like 40%.
I remember saying a few years ago how he would be like the perfect 4 next to Bam.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, again, he suffers an injury. His play declines. He's been in
sure COVID didn't help.
Yeah, like it just all these factors, and it's like I don't think he's said this publicly, but like there's definitely rumors and such. I don't know how true they are, but that he's wanted out for a long time, and I think you could kind of see that towards the end of the season. It's just his play wasn't as productive. It wasn't the cleanest fit, and now he's kind of able to be
with a fresh start.
Yeah, it's a fresh start, and it's a time able to decompress and just kind of play basketball. I mean, he was one of the best rim runners with Trey, at least when he first came up, and it just became a weirder fit. I don't know if it was because of the Capella addition or whatever it was, but
I mean,
it felt like he was just playing in a role that wasn't suited for him, and I'm interested to see how this will develop over time for him. But Rudy, I mean, to me, it's like you couldn't get more than like Rudy Gay in a second round pick. I mean, I know like it makes more sense when the details come out of like, okay, they're able to absorb this trade exception and they're able to build this one. If they use it, there's no guarantee they use it. They might use some of it. They don't have to use all of it. They don't have to use it at all. But I don't know. Like, I feel like they could have gotten more. At least like you could get like another rotation player. You can maybe get another. I mean, when I know, actually,
only 25. Like I know what you mean. Like he still has a lot of time left in the league to really prove himself.
It just feels like they could have gotten more out of it. I didn't actually, when I looked at the salary cap, I don't think I factored in Kobe Buffkin, so that would probably put them 10 below the tax. But regardless, it's just weird to me. I just feel like they could have gotten more, but that's just my opinion. It sucks because it's like I'm sure they had plenty of offers over the subsequent last couple of years that were more than that, and now you offload him because of that, and it didn't ultimately work out. But who is their GM again? Is it?
I think it's Landry Fields now.
Yeah, Landry Fields. And so, I mean, again, if he's able to offload like Capella's money somewhere, if someone's willing to take that, or DeAndre Hunter, if they decide to move off that, even though he is a young player that I still do have stock in.
Maybe package DeJounte if things really didn't go well between him and Trey. Really go for a big swing.
I don't think they do that. I think that's like their last resort. I think they only do that if like they just completely bottom out in the regular season. But
it's fair.
Who knows? I mean, are they going to have to attach an asset to Bogdanovich to get off that? I don't know.
I mean, it's like you said, they have a bunch of young wings. Like, it's the same thing. I remember as a Knicks fan with Cam Reddish, like there's just a complete logjam there at the 3 and the 4. And I thought, oh, this is great. The Knicks have needed a small forward forever. Cam Reddish can be that guy. And obviously did not pan out well for him in New York. And now he's in Portland. And, it's just, I don't know how else to describe it besides having a good problem to have for Atlanta. Obviously you're drafting well, and it just comes down to development and how many minutes you can give these guys. And, they haven't made the right decision every time. And especially now with John Collins out, I think that it really does give them also a chance to have a fresh start, to really reevaluate, give Quinn Snyder a full season with this roster, and kind of see, who do I want to keep around, who's going to have big roles in this rotation, and who becomes more expendable. So I'll be really interested in seeing that too.
Yeah, yeah, and it
But
also again like he felt like he was playing Jalen Johnson and Sadiq Bey more, and it just gives him more run for that.
I think it's all for the best. And obviously it's like you said, John Collins has had flashes of being a really good player, and
He
maybe he
has,
finds that again in Utah. And if not, I'm
yes,
sure, like you said, Danny Ainge will be able to find something, find a taker, find a deal. He always just manages to do that, but we'll have to see.
yeah, Trader Danny,
Trader Ainge. But Matt,
Trader
I want
Danny.
to I want to quickly run through this. It's this Miami Heat segment I've been thinking about. Obviously, we both know that the Heat are unparalleled when it comes to finding players that either the league forgets about, or maybe they don't get picked up in the draft. And they really do a great job of fitting them into the system, and getting some value out of them. So I've been looking at some free agents and some guys who I figured would be available at or near the veteran minimum deal. And I just want a quick fire. I have 9 guys of, would you be willing to, take a flyer on them for the next season? And obviously, outside of a potential Damian Lillard trade, there may not be many avenues for the Heat to upgrade this offseason. So the
No,
first
there's
name,
not.
the first name I want to run by you, Matt, is
Hold
Dennis
on, can I
Smith.
preface by saying that we're doing this without knowing what happens with Gabe and Max? Most
Yes, I
importantly,
will also say that none of the names I have here are Heat players that were on the roster this season have become free agents. I feel like that's a different kind of issue for a different time. But
well,
the
that's true. I just think it's like the big thing with like this Dame thing is I know it's going to drag out over a span of time, and I don't know if that means that Miami won't be able to re-sign either Max or Gabe because they get money elsewhere. But we're doing this assuming that neither of them are on the roster.
yes, so
I don't know what happens with that. So.
you can certainly compare these names I have to obviously Max and Gabe, but the first name that I had in mind was Dennis Smith Jr. Obviously, he's been a journeyman. He was on the Charlotte Hornets this most recent season. I could see the Heat turning him into a pretty nice bench point guard. What do you think about Dennis Smith Jr.?
Um, you cut out a little bit, but I heard you say Dennis Smith Jr.
Yes, yeah.
Um, I wouldn't hate it. I mean, obviously the shooting's going to need to come along.
Right.
But he's kind of that. I do like how pesky he is defensively. He's not a bad rebounding guard.
Still a great athlete.
He's still a great athlete. Miami does need athleticism, whether it is from a smaller point guard or a wing. But I mean, I wouldn't hate it as like I just preface by saying that neither of them are on the roster, but like if let's say Gabe Vincent does resign, I think Gabe Vincent would be Miami's number one priority. I'm just going to say that right now, and I don't know if I'll have to repeat myself by saying that because I might say it a lot, but I think he will be their number one priority among their own free agents to bring back this offseason, especially since Miami might have to part with Kyle. But like if he came in as like a backup point guard, as kind of like your 7th, 8th, 9th guy, I wouldn't hate the flyer for the minimum.
Yeah, and then also he may not go for the minimum this next name, but I do have, of course, Patrick Beverly. He would probably fit in with that Heat culture, hard-nosed defense, but also I'm sure there would be a team that offers him more than the minimum.
Hold on, I'm gonna pull up a picture for you really quick.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't hate. He is such a Heat guy. Here, let me see if I can share my screen for a second. Share screen. Hold on, give me a second.
No, take your time.
I'm gonna blow your mind really quick.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what you got for me.
Hold up. This isn't.
Whoa.
He was a part of their summer league team.
Wow. That is a throw. 2010, 2011.
So,
He was in the decision era. Wow. That is crazy.
so yeah. So I mean, I always like bringing that picture up when there's like a Patrick Beverley meme or somewhere, or someone mentions like Patrick Beverley with the Heat.
I just cannot imagine him with a shaved head. That did blow my mind.
Yeah, he did play with the summer league team. I don't think they brought him back for the regular season. I think they cut him.
Yeah, and then he went to like Europe and then the Rockets,
Yeah,
I guess.
but he was a part of the Heat once upon a time. But I mean, like I would be Luke. I'd be on the fence with it. I mean, it would be very funny to watch Jimmy and
it would. I mean,
defensively.
I don't
Even
know
though
how
I don't
him and
think
Spo would get along is the only thing.
I mean, Spo's a psychopath, dude. He loves the psychopaths because he is a psychopath. People don't really know that about Spo, but he's definitely like
he knows it when he sees it. That's fair enough.
I've definitely read some stuff, heard some stories like from just people who kind of have an in with the
from the know.
Like, yeah, he's definitely like a crazy person, but in like the best way imaginable. And the entire organization is full of crazy psychos, and so it's like, I mean that in the best way possible. So it's like I don't think you would like hate that for anything, but I think it'd be a very funny dynamic. But I wouldn't.
Twitter would be an interesting place if he joined the Heat.
Yeah. Again, I wouldn't hate it. I mean, he does have like the catch and shoot. He would help him at least at the point of attack defensively. He's not the best defender just because he's undersized, but he would help to some degree bring kind of that toughness in. So I guess I wouldn't say no to it. But who's your next guy?
Yeah, so my next guy here, I have Austin Rivers.
I'm good.
You're past?
I'm not. I wouldn't hate Austin Rivers for the minimum.
Exactly. That's my whole issue. Is like these guys could definitely get a mid-level exception somewhere and not the minimum.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the first two guys are getting a mid-level exception anywhere.
That's fair. That's fair. The later names you may see what I mean.
I guess I would take a flyer on it. Again, it's one of those where it's like, if he's your 7th, 8th guy,
he's still got something. He's got some shooting. He's got, he could play both guard spots. Maybe even the 3, like a small ball 3.
Yeah, I mean, he and Duncan would be fun on podcasts.
That's true.
I'm just kidding. Man, I mean, I don't know.
I could see it, but
for the minimum, sure, why not?
So this next guy, I think he might be on a non-guaranteed contract for the next season, or like a team option that there's a chance of being declined. But how would you feel about Ty Jerome? Again, the Warriors may bring him back. I'm not sure yet, but if he was available for the minimum,
Ty Jerome feels like a guy that he could develop.
I agree.
He
showed some good stuff at Virginia. I remember back in the day.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't hate Ty Jerome on the minimum. I wouldn't hate it.
And then my next guy is, I mean, Milwaukee could certainly bring him back, but what about Wes Matthews?
Oh, that feels like for the minimum. I wouldn't hate that. I mean, he's given Jimmy problems. That'd be fun.
He's still great. I mean, he's still a very good
Jimmy
shooter.
Problems that he's been extra physical with Jimmy. It felt like in that Bucks series, he was probably the most physical with Jimmy when they were lined up one-on-one. I mean, he also did a pretty good job on him when he was at the Lakers. But I mean, when we say Wesley Matthews, I mean, we're not talking about like a guy who is underdeveloped. I mean, he's probably in the latter stage of his career, just looking to find somewhere to play. But for the minimum, sure. I kind of just that 3-and-D guy. If you're able to get a consistent few points per game for 10 to 15 minutes a night, him kind of being a little bit of a disruptor defensively, playing alongside Jimmy and Bam. I mean, I guess I wouldn't hate it. So
I think that's fair. And then this next guy is also kind of in the same vein as Ty Jerome. He's on like I think it's either a team option or a player option in Portland. But do you think Kevin Knox could be an option for the Miami Heat? He could be included in the Dame trade for all we know.
That's what
Because
I was gonna say. Like
yeah,
that feels like, yeah, like I had a tweet yesterday where I was talking about like how Nurkic would be, like I wouldn't hate Nurkic if there was like a Dame thing, and I was just going through it on like the trade machine, and it feels like Knox would be someone that could be thrown in a trade. Um, I mean, again, you're taking on a project. I don't know how much you I don't know if you would get rotation minutes, but um, I mean, if I'm getting Damian Lillard, sure.
that's true. Yeah, that's fair.
If
With you
I'm getting
there.
Damian Lillard, why not? Right? This like who the I mean, if the thing that I will say about the Damian Lillard thing that I didn't bring up before is like if Miami does trade for Damian Lillard, it's a big if. I know at this stage, I get it, but if hypothetically they do trade for Damian Lillard, they will be filling a lot of their contracts with minimum guys. So some of these names that you're mentioning right now might actually be on Miami.
You never know.
And so it's one of those things where it's like if I'm getting Damian Lillard out of this and I'm just having to fill out a roster. I mean, I know they only have they only have 9 roster players right now. And so yeah, they can't use their mid level, they can't use their taxpayer mid level, they can't use their biannual because they used it last year and they'd be hard kept if they didn't use it anyways. So it's a lot of like free agency. A lot of this roster will be built on trades or taking players on minimums. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of like where they're at, or with their one trade exception, 4.7 million that they do have from the Dedmon deal. But other than that, they're pretty strapped for avenues to build free agency. So I mean, that's why we're doing this exercise. But
Yeah,
they would take
I just
guys on
had
minimum.
a
So I
couple,
guess I
just a
would.
fun little what if, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
But this next game, I think he very well could make more than the minimum. But I just figured he was on the Spurs last year, really, bad team. But Keita Bates-Diop, he's 27, average nearly 40% from three, 6'8".
I would take him. Yeah.
But again, there's a chance he makes more than the minimum, but that's not here or there. So, uh, my next name, and I feel like I might know the answer to this, is Blake Griffin.
No.
Yeah, I think we saw what we
No.
needed to see when he was on the Celtics.
I mean,
But
is he going to be the Udonis Haslam replacement? Like, what's that going to?
I know that's the only thing. Like,
What's gonna,
if you give up, or a Kevin Love replacement is what I was thinking. But
I ultimately do think Miami brings Love back to kind of.
I think he would take the minimum to stay in Miami. Honestly,
They can sign him because he when he signed the prorated biannual last year, he's eligible to make 3.7 million, I believe, is the number this year that he can that Love could hypothetically make. And so I'm expecting that they probably
that he
do bring him back.
returns.
Even again, I was critical of Love last year. I know with the finger injury, it was a little bit tricky, but I just didn't love how he was utilized. Or I didn't love how he played always. He is up there in age, but I know. The one thing I can say, it's been reported by multiple sources, and teammates have just come out and said it, that he was very good in the locker room.
That's pretty
And
much everywhere
so,
he's been. I think.
yeah, and so it's like that matters, and I really do believe that they like Love. They meaning the team, and I do believe Love really likes them, and so I do believe that he would be brought back because of that leadership that he offered
Yeah.
last year. I don't know what his contract. I don't know if it will be for the minimum. I don't know if they will use his non-bird rights for the 3.7 million. I don't know if that's going to be a 1-year deal, 2-year deal, or even a 3-year deal, which they can do, which would be a little bit weird. But like I don't know what they're going to do with that. But I do think they bring Love back to kind of be that veteran leader.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. But
Man.
I would not. No, I'm good. I'm good with Blake if they do need to. If I would say I'm good with Blake under the circumstance, like unless they only have like 12 or 13 guys on a roster and they need to get to that 14 to get to that 14, if like Blake's like one of the only guys left out there, then sure. But
Yeah,
other than
fair
that, I'm
enough.
like, he's not going to be like the third guy signing free agency, being like, yeah, we're bringing Blake Griffin in. Like, wait, what? Why? I guess
Yeah.
I guess I don't think it would really matter in the end, but
Same with Pat Bev. Twitter would be an
yeah.
interesting place if that ever happened. But my last name here, and it would be a bit of a Cody Zeller replacement of sorts, is Willie Cauley-Stein.
I mean, Miami's rotated through backup centers for the last several years. They did it with Myers Leonard. They did it with,
Dwayne Dedman.
I mean, Myers Leonard actually did start for a little bit because he would.
I know. Then he had that off the court issue, all that stuff.
Yeah, he had that off court issue. Had some bad guy stuff. And then they got Dedman, and then Dedman didn't play well, so then they got Cody Zeller, and then Cody Zeller's not playing well, and so it's like they just rotate backup centers, and so he would be a guy that they would consider probably if he was out there in free agency. And so I don't think, I mean, sure, you just got to keep rotating him out. That's
true. Just
at
a
this
short
point,
shelf life.
It's if you're not drafting like kind of like what Dallas did, if you're not drafting like a Derek Lively or something like that, or you don't have like one of the best centers in basketball. I mean, Miami does already with Bam Adebayo, but like if you're not bringing in someone who has like a pedigree, you just got to keep rotating these guys in and out.
Yeah.
You can't play around with that. But yeah, I would, sure. Again, why not?
Yeah, I mean that's all I've got. I could certainly
at this point, why not?
in future daily shows, unless we do get some movement on potential trades or signings, I could keep finding some more names. I won't call it like dumpster diving because segment for future daily shows if you'd like.
I mean, maybe. I mean, again, it's all going to be predicated on when this Dame stuff gets done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the main domino.
Again, I'm at the point where it's just like pick a side. Like at this point, not that I say I don't care, but it's just like I just want both he and Portland to agree on something, whether it is moving forward or whether it is wanting to get traded, whether it's to Miami or elsewhere, just so everyone can move forward from this. Because, I mean, we are 3 days from free agency. Not that I was expecting something to happen before free agency, because I really wasn't. I expected Dame to kind of want to see how Portland navigates free agency for the first, I don't know, 5-7 days, and then go from there. But like in Miami's case, it's like you have free agents that you want to sign, and it makes it all the more tougher with like the tax and everything to re-sign these guys if you're just dragging out the Dame situation.
It's like how many eggs you want to put in that basket.
Yeah, it's kind of like we have PTSD from what happened with Durant last year, how he kind of stalled. I mean, again, I do preface by saying that there isn't many moves, at least in terms of signing free agents, that would be just all of a sudden out the door. It's not like Miami can go out and sign a guy for the non-taxpayer and just be like, yeah, like we missed out on that. They can't do that because of where their cap situation's at. And so a lot of they can still maneuver their roster around with trades, whether it's a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 for like if they want to start selling on, like, I'm not saying they would do this, but like if Tyler was headlining a package or something, you can get like a 3-for-1 or whatever. I don't know what plan B or C or D or whatever that they would have if they don't acquire Dame. Like, I don't think they're going to run it back.
Yeah.
But there's still ways to improve the roster that doesn't include shooting big for the superstar if they don't land him. But I just have a fear of like, this probably isn't a warranted fear, but I do have the fear of like players are going to be traded and moved, and the players that could help Miami. Not to say they can't move them again, because they can, but it makes the gymnastics a little bit tougher if you're dealing with different teams. But again, like I don't want Miami to miss out on that part specifically, even though that's not a big deal, because again, there's not many ways to improve in free agency when it's not signing guys to the minimum or
Right.
using their trade exception for someone. If they decide to use it, which again, I will keep repeating this when I mention trade exceptions, the majority of them aren't used. And so I guess I'm gonna end by saying that there's not many things that I should be worried about when it comes to like dragging this out. I just don't want to drag out forever. One, because it's just annoying. Like at this point, it's like I'm just annoyed by this, like the Dame updates every day. Because it's like it's the same thing to me. It's like, oh, we're looking to continue to build, or
Thanks, Joe Cronin.
yeah, well, no, it's just one of those things where it's like it feels like nothing new has come out. Like there was a report yesterday that he has serious interest in joining Miami. It's just like we've known this for 2-3 weeks. Like, why is this all of a sudden like? I know the reporters doing their job trying to. I think it was Sam Amick of the Athletic, who's trying to get all the information out there. The people who like to aggregate.
They like to.
Like, yeah, well, that means Dame wants to come to Miami. It was just like we've known that.
And then his video with the music in the background.
And like all the Instagram live stuff. Like I remember I went on my rant a couple weeks ago about him just saying it to reporters when they ask him the question. This feels like more than that. This feels him going out of his way to send signals, whether it's intentional or not. But again, neither side wants to be the bad guy. And so it's one of those things where it's like Dame doesn't want to come out and just publicly trash what Portland's doing and kind of wants to keep that behind closed doors. I get that first public image, but also Portland doesn't want to come out and just be like, yeah, we're going to just outright trade him because we don't want to build around him anymore or whatever the case is, even though they would lose leverage if they did that. And so they're always, they would, no matter what happened during that meeting yesterday, they're always going to come out and say, yeah, we're going to be committed to building around Dame. And so that's why I kind of didn't understand like the entire outrage online about it. Because it's just like, well, does that mean that he's staying in Portland? It's like, no, he could still, Damian Lillard could still have a say. And that meeting could have just gone complete shit. And we wouldn't have known about it until maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, or whatever the case is. Damian Lillard can still say, I want out. And that's kind of like where this comes in. Going back to my very previous first point, never in his life has he wanted to do that. And so that's where it's just like we're just playing the waiting game, and it's just all really annoying. But that's just part of the deal when it comes to stuff like this.
NBA, yeah.
And so it's just like I want this to be over. Like by the minute this daily show ends, I want him to have a decision. Well, I can't talk right now. But that's not going to happen. You and I both know that.
Sadly so.
And so as the days goes on, we're going to be continuing to get Dame updates, whether it's him being cryptic online or the report saying that they're going to continue to build around him no matter what, or whatever the case is. And again, it's all going to be just more annoying to me, but that's, again, nothing I can do about it.
I know.
I can't go in there and trade Dame.
I know you can't just call up Pat Riley and just say get it done, man.
Yeah. I wouldn't love to put all those eggs in the basket again because of what happened last year.
It was tough, yeah.
But again, it's dissimilar to last year. There's not many ways Miami can improve elsewhere unless they do want to trade Duncan, or they want to trade Tyler, or they want to trade Kyle with a first round pick. Why'd I call him Lyle? That's
kind of Lowry, I heard.
Well, yeah, Lowry.
Kyle and
but if they want to trade him with a first rounder for something, I don't know, but they're not going to do that until they figure out what's going on with Dame. So that's my Dame update. It's probably going to be the same shit next week. Maybe the same shit week after that. When free agency's already started. Again, free agency starts in 3 days. I don't know, it just like hit me like a Mack truck. It's like, whoa. Free
I
agency
know.
Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern. I mean, it's probably going to be a lot of guys re-signing elsewhere. Maybe you'll find some guys who signed for the mid-level or whatnot elsewhere. Dylan Brooks could be a Houston Rocket. I'm going to speak that into existence.
Yep. Manifest it.
James Harden might be
Who
returning to
knows?
Philly now because there's been a lot of smoke the last couple of weeks about him going back to Philly, whether it's on a max contract or not.
I think the Sixers
Activity,
should walk away. Let him go to
yeah, but
Houston.
there's going to be a lot of activity. There's could be plenty of activity, as I get mentioned beforehand, with the trade market and
Yeah.
teams trying to get off money because of the second apron or because they're
Well,
deep into the tax or whatever to kind of give them more flexibility. And so teams could be doing that as well. So
I didn't.
uh,
yeah. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be something else. Like you said, this second apron is really gonna throw a wrench into everything.
and even though the penalties are more punitive, I still think there's like the fear factor for this year specifically. Next year, we might see even more movement because
It's
teams
gonna
are
be
going to be
some
like,
caution
okay,
into the
we
wind.
we dealt with this for 1 year. We don't want to deal with this for a second year. Teams might do that, and I don't. Or teams are like, we were near it this year, but the penalties are even more dire next year, and for the subsequent years after that. And so it's like we definitely want to move away from that. Or whatever the case is. I mean, I know again the Warriors are kind of the case where it's like they're going to be a second apron team this year. Who knows if they want to do that next year?
Yeah.
And so, but I still think there is the fear factor. That's why I was kind of like when we talked a couple weeks ago about like what this offseason could entail. I think there's going to be a lot of like what the hell type moves, whether it is like we've seen with the Chris Paul move, like we're just like what, huh? Or even like the John Collins one where it's like, wait, they got what for John Collins again? Like it's going to
There
be
could
a
be
lot
more
of
where that came from, and it's
type
gonna
moves,
be
and whether it is to fit that into trade exceptions or whether that is to get off salary, whatever the
gonna be
deal
a
is,
lot of. It's gonna be some fun chaos.
it's going to be some fun chaos. Hopefully, my team isn't doing dumb shit.
I doubt they would. I feel like they've got the right decision makers, but I will quickly close things out, Matt, with my team because of course
oh yeah, you
heading
forgot
in
you had a Knicks fan that you told me about
heading
beforehand.
into
What's
the
going on?
draft, we got all this smoke about Zach LaVine to the Knicks. You know, the Bulls and the Knicks are in discussions. They're talking about potential packages. And then we find out that Rich Paul is telling his clients not to go to the Knicks. He's telling Clutch Sports clients to avoid the Knicks because of Leon Rose and creative arts. And it's like only the Knicks, man. Like, of course, you know, you have LeBron's agent telling all his guys to stay away from the Knicks. And I'm like, you know, part of me is just completely outraged because, you know, there's bias against the Knicks. You know, everyone hates the Knicks. You know, it's the first time they've actually built something good for a long time, and it looked like Zach LaVine could have been the cherry on top to really add to this roster. But now we have this report that you know Rich Paul is trying to steer his clients away from MSG because of Leon Rose and his ties with trying to get creative arts agents on his roster. But then there's also the part of me that's like, you know, it's not like Adam Silver can step in and really do anything because you know, agents can tell their clients anything. You know, it's not really up to us or up to anyone
Right.
to determine, you know, who does what, who says what, and stuff like that. But that's just my quick rant. It's just like only the Knicks. It's not like you see, you know, John Collins was a part of Clutch Sports. It's not like you see Rich Paul going out against the Utah Jazz, you know, and Danny Ainge. It's just like, come on, man. But you know, the landmines have been set. You know, if we see Clutch Sports people ending up on the Knicks, there could be some repercussions. So
There
that's pretty
are
much what I'm at.
I'm guessing, I mean, I know this from a Heat perspective, but I know there are teams that don't like to go after players who are represented by certain agencies. And so, like, for example, I'll say this because I don't have direct ins with Miami, but like I do know a lot about the organization. They don't like going after clutch clients, whether it's in the draft or whether it's in free agency. And that's kind of been like a trend these last couple of years. I don't know if like Pat has something against that, but
Maybe things with Braun kind of
people have
changed his
made jokes
perception.
online about Miami not going after clutch clients, and that it is true. I don't think there's a single player on the roster right now who is represented by a clutch client. I know they some. I know there was some. I don't know if this was the direct reason why, but they did pass on Tyrese Maxey in the draft when they took Precious Achua.
Yeah,
I think Tyrese went like a pick or two later to Philly because he's a clutch client, or he was a clutch client at the time. I don't know if he still is, but I know teams. I'm guessing there's among the 28 other teams out there. I'm guessing there are some who don't want to go after whether it's clutch client or CAA or like whatever the agency is, and for some reason, whether there's a connection, but there were not a connection, but whether there's some vitriol from a front office member to that agent or agency or whatever the case is. But in New York's defense, I don't think they're the only organization.
Oh, I agree.
That
That's
has
just
that.
this is just my self-centered Knicks rant for the day.
Do you still think they're able to? They're gonna like swing for a trade for someone?
I mean, now I'm starting to see more and more about Paul George, and I mean,
Okay.
look, my whole idea is, you know what, go for it. Leon Rose has built up enough assets, has built up enough currency in the trade market where you can't afford to have a swing and a miss. And obviously, Paul George, I think he's under contract for one more year, and then he's got a $51 million player option. I would say you do what you got to do. Trade RJ, trade Obi. Hopefully not Quentin Grimes, but I understand Jerry West really
You don't
wants
want to
him.
overpay for Paul George.
But also, you don't want to overpay severely. But if you find a fair middle ground between the Clippers and what Jerry West would want in a trade, and you pull the trigger, I would give it a year of having a Brunson, Paul George, Randall big three. I'd give it at least this season. If it goes well, have PG opt in for the next season. And, I basically would give the Knicks a 2-year window with Paul George. And then if it doesn't work out, you kind of, say it didn't work. You let him walk to free agency. You don't sign him to a big contract because he's just too old and too injury prone at this point in his career to really be committing that kind of money to him.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. He is making $45.5 million, roughly 45.6 this year.
I would take that risk. I'd give him
9 player option.
I'd give up RJ. I'd give up Obi. If you can get Evan get money back to kind of make it work, like Boris Diaw or what's his name, Batum. I would do that. Morris, yeah, exactly. Like I would personally try and make that happen. I think it's worth it. Paul George, obviously, 10 years ago he killed the Knicks in the second round of the playoffs in 2013 with the Pacers, and now it's a full circle moment that 10 years later he could potentially be the centerpiece of a Knicks contender.
I mean, we have seen teams do that in the past about like, this guy's killed me for 10 years, or this guy's killed me for X and X years. Let's sign him to this lucrative deal. I mean, he's already under contract, so that's not going to matter that much. But, I mean, I don't hate the idea.
I mean, that's the one position.
I just don't know what. I don't know. I'd have to go to the trade machine and see like what they would give up for him.
I mean, obviously, my thoughts on Brandon Ingram. I think small forward is the one position that the Knicks really should be targeting this offseason.
You don't like the Evan Fournier?
I think both Fournier and RJ, I've seen enough out of the both of them. RJ, again, he's a young guy. He could develop into something, but I just don't think New York is the place for him to develop into a star caliber player.
Interesting. Okay.
Especially, obviously, in that closeout game between the Knicks and the Heat, both RJ and Julius Randle, for that matter, had probably some of the worst games of their career to date.
Yeah, and Brunson went off for like
Brunson 40. Single-handedly kept the Knicks in that
game. Yeah. Also, before, I mean, I know we're like past the hour.
Yeah, we can close it out pretty soon.
I was gonna just ask if is there one free agent that you're keeping an eye on?
I mean,
whether he is an unrestricted, restricted, whatever. Like, who is a name that you're keeping an eye on?
All I can say
outside of your own Austin Reeves.
All I can say is it looks like the Knicks Villanova connection will continue, and it will be Dante DiVincenzo that the Knicks target in free agency.
Wow. Okay.
Josh Hart, Brunson, and DiVincenzo. That would be something.
That's going to happen, but I have heard the name mentioned.
I would love that, honestly. Off the bench, I think he'd fit in. Obviously, Brunson and Hart probably love the guy. If you get Fournier out of there, you have, I think, Brunson, quickly, Grimes, and DiVincenzo. I think that's a very solid guard rotation.
That is a lot of guards, though.
I know that's the thing. You'd have to get Fournier. You'd have to get RJ out of there. You have to get potentially.
One
I
guy,
mean,
there's
Josh
a
Hart would have
couple
to play
guys
the
that I'm keeping
three.
an eye on. I'll just name a couple just off the rip. Of course, I'm going to speak my Dylan Brooks to Houston into existence. I am uh, just because I think as he's like the Ime Culture Center. Houston's going to throw money at players because they have plenty of cap space. Feels like a team that would throw money at Dylan Brooks. A couple others I'm keeping an eye on. Cameron Johnson. I feel like he could fit with
A lot
more
of
than half of the teams in the league.
yeah.
I don't know how much money he would be offered by certain teams because again, not every team has cap space. I mean, a team like Houston might offer, a team like San Antonio might offer him. I'm trying to think of other teams like maybe a team like Utah who's in need of wings offers him money. Like I don't know what that would entail, but I mean he's a restricted free agent. Brooklyn can in theory bring him back. The other guy I wanted to mention who's also a restricted free agent is Austin Reeves.
Yeah.
And I'm mostly saying Austin Reeves because he's a weird case study. I'm not going to explain the arenas provision like in length, but the thing with the Lakers is they can match any contract with him, but the details of the contract would be weird if a team were to offer Austin Reeves $100 million, which I think is the max they could offer him over 4 years because of the arenas provision, which means that the first couple of years would be around the mid-level exception, or at least no more than the mid-level exception. Yeah. And then the final 2 years of the contract would be like $35 million or whatever, just some huge number.
Wow.
And so if a team was willing to offer that, because I think I read somewhere, I don't know again how true it is, but just obviously the rumor mill across the NBA, you don't know what's true and what's not. You kind of have to take things with a grain of salt. But I saw somewhere that the Lakers would try to match any deal that Austin Reeves would garner. And in the Lakers' defense, I don't think they have anyone on contract for 25, 26 and beyond. And so they could, in theory, do it if they want to. But it's like, would you want to pay Austin Reeves $35 million or 30, whatever the number would be? I don't know what the final number would be.
Maybe he turns into a better player than we've seen, but still,
that's a bit of a stretch. It'd be his 5th year in the league. Like, who knows what his developmental track is going to be? I mean, he's been a good player. There's no question.
He really showed out in the playoffs. I'll give him. He was important in the playoffs for the Lakers.
But like, it's just an interesting question because it's like the most the Lakers can offer him because he's on early bird rights is like 51. Or maybe not 51. Maybe it's gone a little bit up, like 55-ish. Fits like 55, 60, around kind of that number. But is a team willing to throw $100 million at Austin Reeves and being like Lakers match it? You won't. Like
this is my theory, Matt. I think in order for the Philadelphia 76ers to have a successful offseason, they need to let James Harden walk to Houston. Go play with the kids. Go play with Ime. And then you can finally put a big boy offer in for Austin Reeves.
I mean, they need to probably get off of Tobias's contract.
That's true. You'd also have to offload Tobias likely if you want to get a considerable salary, whatever. But I think Maxey, Reeves, and Embiid could do some good things.
But yeah, no, there's just a couple names I'm keeping an eye on. I know we've gone way over than what we should, but those are the names I'm keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I will certainly do that as well. I'm definitely looking forward, either if it's in video form like this or some articles. It's gonna be a wild free agency.
Yeah, man. You have anything else?
I don't think so. I think we got some MLB stuff. We got the Heat. We got some other NBA news around the horn. But again, everyone, just get ready, buckle in your seats, get your popcorn ready. We're in for a very wild period. With 7 days from now, when we're back on the Daily Show, we'll probably have a lot to go over.
Well, there is going to be moves that are going to be made.
There are going to be some moves to be made, ladies and gentlemen. But everyone, have a great Tuesday. We will see you next Tuesday with presumably a lot more to go over. But everyone, have a good one.